Welcome to the POLSIS Research in Profile series. My name is Andrew Phillips, and today I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Professor Christian Reus-Smit, to speak on his latest book on cultural diversity, international theory in a world of difference. Chris, welcome to Research in Profile.
Thank you, Andrew.
So tell me, Chris, a book on cultural diversity and international order, why engage this topic now?
So, I think the best way into it is to think about the anxiety that currently exists in Western capitals around the world. And this is an anxiety about the sort of power shift that's occurring in world politics, in particular about the rise of non-Western great powers, especially China. And this is in part an anxiety about a sort of traditional realist concern with power transition in the international system that's likely to produce instability, even war, when you get these sorts of moments. But it's also, importantly, a cultural anxiety. It's a fear that non-Western great powers are not going to have the same commitment to the Western liberal international order as have dominant states in the past, and that these states may in fact seek to either remake the international order in their own image, or the kind of normative consensus that's needed to sustain that order will fragment. And this anxiety is kind of palpable. You get it, you see it in foreign speeches of foreign ministers, you see it in public commentaries, you see it in public policy documents. And the problem is that, of course, that when you dig a little bit deep into this, it's based on a set of assumptions about the relationship between cultural diversity and international order, a thing that we know actually very little about. And it's based on an assumption that either two positions, really. One position is that international orders grow out of sort of unitary cultural contexts and that cultural diversity is a threat to international order. Or another view which says, well, actually, the international institutions that we have, sovereignty, multilateralism, international law, enable states of diverse cultural complexions to coexist together. Right? So you have these two very different views. Now, both of those views are really deeply problematic, both theoretically and historically. The first argument is problematic because, as anthropologists and sociologists will tell you, there's no such thing as a unitary cultural context. All cultural contexts are heterogeneous and contradictory, so that can't have been the context in which international orders emerged. And the other argument is problematic because international institutions don't neutralise culture, they don't take it away, they actually organise culture and structure it, creating hierarchies and patterns of inclusion and exclusion. So the real purpose of the book is to probe this relationship between cultural diversity and international order more deeply, to try and put the present debate on better foundations, both theoretically and historically.
I was going to ask you that on the question of theory. You're an equal opportunity critic when it comes to engaging with existing approaches. You go after the realists, you go after the rationalists, the constructivists. What is it that all of these very smart international relations theorists get wrong about culture?
Well, one of the things you're right that it's even-handed because, of course, I actually use my past work as a sort of artefact of critique.
You're taking no prisoners, including yourself.
Including myself.
There you go.
But look, I think what's really fascinating is that there's an old critique of international relations that says that this is a field that doesn't deal with questions of culture very well at all. And that's true. But what's also really fascinating is that when you look at the major theories in our field, all of them make arguments about culture and all of them make assumptions about culture. They build culture into their arguments. But what's striking is that despite whatever other theoretical differences they have, they actually all end up talking about culture in a very similar way. They all invoke versions of what I call the default conception of culture, which is a view of cultures as coherent, neatly bounded, tightly integrated, and strongly constitutive of actors' identities and interests. And we see that invoked in all sorts at the level of civilization, at the level of nation, at the level of strategic culture. The same kind of ideas about culture get resuscitated.
So if that older conception of culture, which is quite broadly shared among existing approaches, if that's wrong, what are the central arguments and claims that you advance in this book as your positive alternative?
So the book makes, in the second part of the book, the latter part of the book makes two claims. The first one is that is how we conceive of culture. So we need to take seriously, I argue, the views of anthropologists and sociologists and cultural studies scholars that cultures are inherently heterogeneous, contradictory, highly variegated, very loosely bounded, if bounded at all, and that needs to be our starting point. And so the argument that I build about the relationship between cultural diversity and international order takes that as its starting point. It says, before we assume anything else, let's assume existential cultural diversity in which all orders emerge. The second argument is an argument about institutions, and it's an argument that says that those who argue that international institutions somehow neutralise culture are wrong. International institutions don't neutralise culture, they organise culture. They authorise some aspects of cultural difference over others, they create cultural hierarchies, and that's important for understanding how international orders evolve to manage the issue of cultural diversity. And we can look historically at how these different institutional constructions that I call diversity regimes have structured and organised cultural diversity in different ways. Westphalia, post-Versailles, the standard of civilization, after decolonisation, all of these saw new diversity regimes constructed that do exactly what I said. They organise cultural difference, they don't neutralise it.
So this is a really huge inquiry that you're advancing, and my understanding is that this book constitutes the first of a trilogy. Just wondering if you could give us a sneak preview, if you like, of what lies await for us in volumes 2 and 3.
Right, so this is, you're right, this is my kind of academic Lord of the Rings, but without any of the hobbits, right?
No Sauron?
And, no Sauron, but we've got there's lots of diverse actors in there. So the first book is really clears the theoretical terrain, and then, as you know quite well, because you're my co-editor of the second volume.
That's a spoiler alert there, but
right.
yes.
The second book, which will be coming out next year with Cambridge, is an edited book that brought together some of the world's top theorists of international order with eminent scholars of cultural diversity to, in a sense, do an interdisciplinary exercise of writing across the boundaries between those areas to think about cultural diversity and international order in a new way. And that significantly kind of elaborates on ideas that are in the first volume. And then the third volume is going to be an historical sociology of cultural diversity and international order that will be another monograph, and it will be looking at different historical international orders and how they organised diversity and with what consequences.
So it's a grand project, but congratulations on completion of the first volume, and thank you very much for joining us today on Research in Profile.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.